Chapter 1 Horse Lords Meet Paper Trails. Hey guys, tonight we ride straight into the thundering hooves of history. Specifically, the moment the Mongols, those masters of the open steppe, slam headfirst into civilizations with something they don't have: a proper mailroom. You're crouched low in the saddle somewhere near the Khitan frontier, 1211 AD. The air tastes like dust and crushed grass. Ahead, a captured Chinese courier post smolders, a squat, unfamiliar building of brick and timber, not felt and leather. Your Mongol comrades poke suspiciously at scroll tubes and ledger books, their faces twisted in confusion. Paperwork. To warriors who navigate by stars and wind, this feels like sorcery. You smell ink, not horse sweat. You see clerks, not archers. And it dawns on you: empires run on words, not just arrows. Here's your reality check. If you'd been that captured courier caught letting a message fall behind schedule, Genghis Khan's penalty wasn't a stern memo. Historians whisper he preferred creative solutions. Let's just say you probably wouldn't survive the reprimand. Efficiency to the Mongols wasn't a goal. It was survival. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. But only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Seriously, no pressure. Just genuine vibes. And hey, drop a comment below with your location and local time. It's wild to think we're all drifting into this story from different corners of the planet. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You dismount, boots crunching on shattered clay inkwells. One of your brothers-in-arms holds up a bamboo tube sealed with wax. He sniffs it, makes a face, tosses it into the fire. Poof! Centuries of bureaucratic wisdom, gone in a curl of smoke. That's the clash, right there. The Mongols' genius for movement meeting the Song dynasty's genius for administration. The Song had courier stations every 20 li, about 10 kilometers. Rest stops, fresh horses, hot meals, even emergency medical kits. Their messengers carried waterproofed dispatches, sometimes sealed with, wait for it, crocodile dung resin. Remember that smell. It'll haunt us later. Mainstream historical fact: the Song dynasty's postal system, the Yizhan, was staggeringly advanced. It employed over 50,000 couriers and used a complex relay network with priority tiers, urgent military alerts, tax reports, even imperial birthday greetings. Think of it as ancient express shipping with standardized uniforms and mileage logs. But here's the quirky tidbit. Some stations kept carrier pigeons and message-trained dogs. Yes, dogs. Fast, loyal, less likely to be eaten by hawks than pigeons. Scholars found records of swift-footed hounds delivering small scrolls across mountainous terrain where horses struggled. Imagine a panting mastiff dropping a damp imperial decree at your feet. Good boy. Historians still argue whether Genghis Khan initially saw this system as a toy to break or a tool to steal. He was famously pragmatic. Burn a city? Sure. But spare engineers, scribes, doctors, and apparently postal administrators. His glare sweeps over the smoldering relay post. That flicker in his eyes? It's not anger. It's calculation. Messages win wars faster than swords, he realizes. Delay means death. Distance means defeat. He needs this. Paper magic, but on his terms. Across his empire. which, let's be honest, is about to get very large. Your Khan barks an order. Suddenly, you're not just looting silk and silver. You're rounding up scribes, mapmakers, and, most crucially, the bewildered station master. He's trembling, clutching a ledger like a shield. Genghis doesn't want his head. He wants his knowledge. How far between stations? How fast can a man ride? How do you keep the tea hot and the horses fresh? The answers aren't written in the stars. They're in this singed ledger. The greatest land empire in history is about to be built, quite literally, on the backs of messengers. And you might just get promoted from raider to regional dispatch coordinator. Try explaining that at the next family reunion on the steppe. Chap 2. Genghis demands speed. Your promotion to regional dispatch coordinator lasts about as long as a snowflake on the Gobi in July. Because Genghis Khan isn't just interested in speed anymore, he's obsessed. You stand rigid in the smoky gloom of his command tent, somewhere near the ruins of Zhongdu. Outside, the siege engines groan. Inside, the air crackles with something worse: the Khan's impatience. A captured Jin dynasty courier kneels, trembling, explaining why a vital message about enemy reinforcements took 5 days to travel a distance a Mongol pony could cover in 2. Genghis listens, his face like stone. Then he leans forward. His voice, when it comes, isn't a shout. It's colder, deader. 5 days, he repeats. The courier whimpers an excuse about rain-swollen rivers. Genghis flicks a finger. 2 guards drag the man out. You don't hear the scream. You don't need to. The lesson is carved into your bones. Delay is betrayal. Slowness is death. Speed becomes the empire's new god, and you're thrust into its ruthless priesthood. Forget leisurely rides across familiar steppes. Now you're part of a terrifying experiment. Genghis has his captured scribes, engineers, and that traumatized Song station master hauled before him daily. Make it faster, he demands. Make it survive. The prototypes are brutal. Early relay stations are just circles of felt yurts spaced a hard day's ride apart. Messengers arrive exhausted, swap mounts, gulp down sour kumis, fermented mare's milk, tastes like victory and regret, and plunge back into the unknown. Failure isn't tolerated. A rider collapses, his replacement is already spurring forward over his body. A horse founders? The next mount better be saddled before the dust settles. Mainstream historical fact. The nascent Mongol system, later known as the Yam, quickly achieved astonishing speeds. Riders could cover 200 miles, 320 kilometers, in a single day under optimal conditions. Compare that to the famed Roman cursus publicus, which managed maybe 50 miles a day on its best roads. Genghis didn't build roads. He built a machine powered by desperation and horse meat. But here's the quirky tidbit fueling that speed. The Mongols mastered changing horses without stopping. Seriously, riders approached a station at full gallop. Station attendants, chosen for strength and suicidal bravery, would sprint alongside the incoming horse, grab the rider's outstretched arms, and yank him sideways onto a fresh, already moving mount. The old horse, spent and lathered, would stumble away. One slip, one mistimed grab. Let's just say station attendants had a high turnover rate. It was less a transfer, more a controlled collision. Imagine the sheer, terrifying ballet of it. the thundering hooves, the grunt of effort, the rider flying through the air like a sack of urgent grain. Historians still argue whether the yam's early ruthlessness stemmed from genuine strategic necessity or simply reflected Genghis Khan's notoriously low tolerance for excuses. Was the system designed for peak efficiency, or was it born from the Khan's personal fury at being kept waiting? Evidence points both ways. His decrees often carried deadlines measured in days for distances that seemed impossible. Fail, and the punishment was inventive. One account, likely exaggerated, but chilling nonetheless, mentions messengers suspected of laziness being forced to eat the scroll they delayed before facing execution. Talk about digesting your mistakes. You feel this pressure like a physical weight. You're riding through a blizzard now, somewhere north of the Yellow River. The wind howls like 1,000 lost spirits. Ice crusts your eyelashes. Your fingers are numb claws gripping the reins. The message tube under your coat feels like a block of ice against your ribs. It contains troop movements, vital for an upcoming battle. You must reach the next station before dawn. Failure isn't just your death. It could mean the unraveling of a campaign. You spot the faint glow of a station yurt through the swirling snow, a beacon of hope and terror. Will the fresh horse be ready? Will the attendants be awake? Will you stay alive long enough to make the handoff? You dig your heels into your trembling mount, urging one last burst of speed. The Empire doesn't run on bravery or strategy alone. Tonight, it runs on you, a frozen, terrified cog in Genghis Khan's terrifying new machine. The message, sealed with something less fragrant than crocodile dung, but equally final, must get through, or else. Chap 3, Yam Stations Rise. That faint glow in the blizzard, it wasn't hope. It was just a very cold, very smoky yurt, smelling of wet felt, boiled mutton, and the sharp tang of terrified sweat. You stumble inside, half frozen, shoving the precious message tube into the hands of the bleary-eyed station master, a grizzled veteran missing 2 fingers to frostbite. He barely glances at it before barking orders. Before you can even choke down a lukewarm sip of kumis, a fresh rider, face set like stone, is vaulted onto a shaggy steppe pony already dancing with impatience. He vanishes back into the white void before your own breath has fully thawed. You watch him go. That's the yam taking root, not just riders, but the stations themselves. And building them? That's your new, equally terrifying assignment. Forget riding. You're now part of the advanced logistics nightmare, carving relay posts into landscapes that actively hate permanence. Genghis's decree echoes in your skull, every 40 li across the realm. 40 li, roughly 20 miles. The ideal distance a hard-ridden horse could cover before collapsing. Simple on a map scribbled on cured sheepskin. Brutal in reality. You trudge behind ox carts laden with prefabricated yerk frames, iron stoves, and sacks of grain, heading towards, well, nowhere desirable. Survey teams scramble ahead, arguing violently. One points at a windswept plateau. Good sightlines, defensible. Another spits. No water, horses die in 3 days. You see the calculations happening in real time, a terrifying blend of military strategy and desperate guesswork. Stations rise in mountain passes where the wind screams like a banshee. forcing builders to chain the yurts to giant boulders. They sprout in scorching deserts, requiring wells dug 30 men deep through shifting sand. They cling to the edges of frozen Siberian taiga forests, where timber is plentiful, but wolves and the cold are constant, gnawing companions. Mainstream historical fact: the scale was staggering. By Kublai Khan's Yuan dynasty peak, estimates suggest over 1,400 yam stations spiderwebbed across the empire, from Korea to Hungary, Siberia to Vietnam. Each wasn't just a stable, it was a mini fortress, barracks for riders and attendants, fodder stores, blacksmiths, sometimes even small garrison troops, a self-sustaining node in a nervous system spanning continents. But here's the quirky, slightly horrifying tidbit. Not all messengers rode. For truly impassable terrain, dense jungle, sheer cliffs, raging torrents, the Yam employed arrow messengers. These weren't archers, but runners. Chosen for insane endurance and local knowledge, they'd travel light. A small satchel, a water skin, maybe a knife. Their job? Cover ground where even sure-footed Mongol ponies couldn't tread. Think human mountain goats scrambling up cliffs with messages strapped to their backs. Or swimmers fording icy rivers holding the dispatch tube above their heads. One Persian chronicler describes encountering a runner in the Hindu Kush Mountains who'd covered 60 miles of vertical terrain in a single day, fueled by nothing but dried meat and pure, unadulterated fear of the consequences of stopping. Their motto was essentially, run or die. Probably both. Historians still argue whether the placement of these stations was a triumph of central planning or chaotic, localized improvisation. Did some brilliant Mongol strategist plot each one on a grand map, considering gradients, water sources, and bandit threats? Or did the network simply grow like a fungus, following the chaotic paths of conquest, with stations slapped down wherever a commander screamed, "We need a post here yesterday"? The truth is likely a messy mix. Records show furious arguments between generals and the nascent Yam administration about station locations. A general wants it here for his campaign. The Yam master wants it there for long-term efficiency. Guess who usually won? Hint, it involved the general having more swords. You're hacking at frozen Siberian Earth now, trying to set foundation posts for station number 347. Or is it number 348? You lost count somewhere near Lake Baikal. Your breath freezes in your beard. Your fingers are raw. Every thud of the hammer sends jolts of pain up your arms. Around you, a motley crew labors, captured Chinese carpenters muttering about proper joinery, Persian stonemasons bewildered by the lack of stone, and burly Mongol warriors looking profoundly unhappy about doing manual labor instead of looting. The station master, a man whose perpetual scowl suggests he drew the cosmic short straw, barks orders. Deeper, stronger. The Khan's eyes are everywhere. He means the inspectors. Yam officials who appeared without warning, checking fodder quality, horse health, message ledgers, and the structural integrity of the latrine. Fail an inspection? The punishment made Genghis's earlier creative solutions look like a stern talking to. You glance at the half-built watchtower. It looks crooked. You sigh. Maybe running messages was easier. At least then, The wolves only chased you sometimes. Here, the cold, the work, and the fear of the inspector's whip are constant. This is the unglamorous spine of an empire built on speed. Sweat, splinters, and the ceaseless shiver of building something permanent in a world built for tense and movement. Chapter 4, Paiza Power. That crooked Siberian watchtower? Turns out the inspector did notice. His punishment wasn't the whip, surprisingly. It was a demotion so perfect in its cruelty it makes you wince. You're back on the road. But not as the glorious, galloping messenger you once were. Oh no. You're now a glorified delivery boy for the Yam's most terrifying bureaucracy, the Office of Passports and Passage. Specifically, you're hauling a locked iron chest, sloshing with freshly minted paiza, the soul-crushing, life-saving metal passports that make this whole murderous machine tick. Forget dodging wolves, you're dodging responsibility for the Empire's most potent symbols of authority. The paiza isn't just a pass. It's a physical manifestation of the Khan's will. Cast in metal. And holding one, it feels less like a privilege, more like clutching a live grenade. You finally get issued yours after weeks of paperwork that would make a Song Dynasty clerk weep with pride. It's a small rectangle of iron, surprisingly heavy for its size, hanging from a leather thong around your neck. Stamped onto its surface are crude, unmistakable symbols: a galloping horse, your right to demand fresh mounts, and the tamga, the seal of the great Khan himself. This tiny, cold slab grants you absolute priority across thousands of miles. Show it at a station, and groggy attendants snap awake, scrambling for the best horse, the warmest corner, the least weevil-infested grain. Flash it at a checkpoint manned by surly, suspicious local troops, and their spears instantly point upwards. It's your official "Don't Murder Me" card. Lose it? Well, let's just say the wolves would be a kinder fate. Mainstream historical fact. Paiza came in ranks, literally. Common messengers got iron or bronze. High officials or military commanders sported silver. Imperial family members or top generals? Solid gold, sometimes even inlaid with precious stones. The material screamed your importance before you opened your mouth. A golden paiza bearer could commandeer anything. Boats, entire caravans, the local Khan's favorite concubine's bathhouse. Probably. It was less a passport, more a mobile license to pillage imperial resources. But here's the quirky, bureaucratic nightmare tidbit. Not all paiza were for humans. Seriously, the Yam issued animal paiza, special badges for imperial falcons being transported for hunts, for prized war horses being moved between stud farms, even for Kublai Khan's favorite Tibetan mastiffs. Imagine a confused station master trying to verify the authenticity of a snarling mastiff's engraved silver neck plate, while the handler frantically shouts, "He is loyal cloud of the western sky! Look at the paperwork!" The administrative headache must have been epic. Lost your dog's paiza? Hope you enjoy explaining that to a Yam inspector with a ledger and a grudge. Historians still argue whether the draconian penalties for paiza misuse, forgery meant death, often slow, misuse meant exile to somewhere terminally unpleasant, were strictly enforced everywhere, or if corruption and clever forgeries were rampant in the vast, hard-to-police stretches of the empire. Were local officials truly terrified enough of the distant Khan to meticulously check every grubby iron plaque presented by a half-frozen rider? Or did a well-placed bribe and a convincing story sometimes smooth things over? The official records scream absolute adherence. Personal accounts whisper of flexibility, especially far from Karakoram or Dadu. You feel the weight of your iron paiza like an anchor as you push your new, slightly resentful horse towards yet another station. This one perched precariously on a mountain pass in the Pamirs. The wind howls, trying to snatch the precious metal from your neck. You see the station guards first, hard-eyed men wrapped in furs, spears lowered. You don't slow. You fumble with stiff, cold fingers, pulling the paiza out from under your layers. You hold it aloft, the metal catching the weak sunlight. The lead god squints, steps closer, his breath fogging. He peers at the stamp, traces the horse symbol with a calloused finger. A slow nod. The spears rise. The gates creak open. The relief is physical, a warmth spreading through your chest despite the freezing air. You've passed the test. This time, ... Inside the cramped, smoky station, the routine is familiar, yet underscored by the paiza's power. You hand it over briefly to the station master. He doesn't ask for your name, your origin, your destination. He barely looks at you. He studies the metal. He checks its markings against a worn list nailed to a post, runs a thumb over the stamp to feel its depth, a crude anti-forgery measure. Satisfied, he grunts, stamps your travel log, another piece of bureaucracy, and barks orders for a horse. Your paiza is returned. The transaction is impersonal, efficient, chilling. You are not a person here. You are a moving piece of authorized metal, granted temporary access to the Empire's lifeblood, speed, and fodder. You gulp down hot broth, the paiza resting cold against your sternum once more. Outside, your fresh mount stamps impatiently. The mountains stretch endlessly ahead. You touch the iron, your lifeline, your burden, your silent scream of, "I belong here, for now." Onward. Chapter 5. Riders of Relentless Pace. That cold iron paiza against your chest feels less like a shield and more like a ticking clock as you spur your fresh horse out of the Pamir station. The mountains are behind you now, replaced by the vast undulating emptiness of the Central Asian steppe. This is where the yam breathes. This is where speed becomes a religion, and its acolytes pay in blood, bone, and sheer, unadulterated exhaustion. You're not just riding anymore. You're a projectile, fired from station to station, fueled by desperation and fermented mare's milk. The rhythm is brutal, hypnotic. Gallop, gallop, gallop. The landscape blurs into a smear of dun-colored grass and endless sky. Your world shrinks to the drumbeat of hooves, the bite of the wind, the ache in your thighs, and the relentless pressure behind you. You lean low over the horse's neck, whispering encouragement that sounds more like a plea. Faster, brother. Just a little faster. The station appears on the horizon, a cluster of yurts, a plume of smoke, impossibly distant, then suddenly terrifyingly close. The attendants spill out, already moving. A practiced chaos. You don't slow. You can't slow. Time bleeds away with every stride not taken at full tilt. Mainstream historical fact. The physical toll was monstrous. Messengers rode in all weather, blistering sun that cracked leather and skin, torrential rains that turned trails to sucking mud, blizzards that stole breath and bearings. They averaged 15 to 20 hours in the saddle per leg. Chroniclers describe riders arriving at stations barely conscious, slumped over their mounts, fingers frozen around the reins, mouths crusted with blood, from biting lips raw to stay awake. This wasn't a job. It was a slow-motion suicide mission mandated by the state. But here's the quirky biohack tidbit. The Mongols had an early grasp of sports nutrition. Sort of. Beyond the ever-present kumis, liquid courage and calories, riders relied on travel cakes, dense, portable blocks of rendered fat, ground dried meat, millet, and sometimes a kick of powdered ephedra, a mild stimulant. Think prehistoric energy bar meets questionable herbal supplement. Need to stay awake for 18 more hours? Gnaw on a chunk of congealed mutton fat laced with mountain tea. Historians still argue whether the legendary tales of messengers literally sleeping in the saddle are plausible exaggeration or grim reality. Could a man, physically shattered and mentally frayed, achieve a state of semi-consciousness, trusting his horse and muscle memory to keep him upright and moving towards the next station's beacon? You hit the station yard at a bone-jarring gallop. The world tilts. Strong hands grab your arms before you fully register stopping. You're yanked sideways, the terrifying mid-air transfer onto a new horse, its muscles already bunching beneath you. Your boot barely grazes the ground. The spent mount you arrived on is already staggering away, foam flecking its heaving sides. You shove the message tube, warm now from your body heat, into an outstretched hand. Someone shoves a leather flask into yours. Kumis. You gag it down, the sourness jolting your senses. There's no time for broth, for rest, for acknowledging the new raw blisters screaming on your inner thighs. An attendant slaps the fresh horse's rump. Hard, and you're off again, catapulted back into the void. The miles melt into agony. Your vision swims, your hands cramp. You hallucinate shapes in the swirling dust devils. You remember the Song Dynasty couriers with their waterproofed scrolls and crocodile dung seals, their neat stations every 20 li. They probably had tea breaks. They probably complained about paperwork. You'd trade your iron paiza for one of their boring, predictable shifts right now. The Mongol way isn't better. It's just faster, a machine lubricated with pain. You glance down at the horse's neck, lathered white. You pat it, a gesture of shared suffering. Just to the next fire, you croak, your voice raw. Just to the next fire. The horizon offers no answers, only more grass, more sky, and the relentless, pounding rhythm of hooves eating the earth beneath you. The message must flow, even if the messenger dissolves along the way. Chapter 6. Not just horses. The rhythmic thump-thump-thump of hooves fades, replaced by a different, unsettling percussion. Water slapping against wood. You've reached the Amu Darya River, a vast, muddy serpent coiling across the landscape. The endless steppe is behind you. Ahead lies a different kind of yam, one that doesn't run on hooves, but on currents and oars. Your horse, sensing the shift, snorts nervously. The familiar relay station isn't a cluster of yurts here, but a chaotic river dock hammered together from rough timber. Boats, flat-bottomed barges, slender reed skiffs, even captured Song war junks repurposed for mail. bob like anxious ducks. The air smells of fish, wet hemp and tar instead of horse sweat and dust. You dismount, legs wobbling after days in the saddle. Your relief at being off the horse instantly replaced by a sailor's deep-seated unease. You hate boats. The station master here isn't a grizzled warrior, but a wiry man with forearms like knotted rope and eyes perpetually narrowed against the glare off the water. He glances at your iron paiza, then jerks his thumb towards a waiting barge. "Urgent dispatches for Samarkand," he grunts. You ride with the tide. No fresh horse, no galloping transfer, just floating. You clamber aboard, the deck shifting treacherously under your boots. The barge is crammed, sacks of grain, barrels of dubious liquid, a few caged chickens, and 3 other riders looking equally green around the gills. The crew, sinewy men who move with the boat's roll, cast off. The current grabs you. The shore slides away. Your world tilts on a new axis. Mainstream historical fact. The Yam wasn't just a land network. Rivers and coastal routes were vital arteries. Major waterways like the Yellow River, Yangtze, Grand Canal, Volga, and this very Amu Dara were patrolled by Yam courier boats. These weren't leisurely cruises. Imperial edicts demanded speed, meaning rowers pulling double shifts, sails straining in favorable winds, and navigating treacherous rapids by moonlight. A message could travel hundreds of miles downstream, faster than any rider could hope to match, especially with heavy cargo like tax grain or imperial gifts. But here's the quirky, fishy tidbit. For short hops across rivers or lakes, where docking a whole boat was impractical, the Yam employed message buoys. Hollowed out, waterproofed gourds or specially crafted wooden floats, weighted to stay upright, would be released upstream near a known station or patrol boat on the opposite shore. Inside, a wax-sealed tube, of course. Sometimes, these buoys were even carved into simple fish shapes to, hopefully, deter curious otters or bored fishermen. Imagine a station guard on the Volga bank hauling in a suspiciously buoyant wooden carp, cracking it open to find tax reports from Moscow. Efficiency? Or desperation? You watch a similar gourd boy painted a garish red, bobbing past your barge now, heading downstream towards who knows where. One of your fellow riders mutters, "Hope that one's not too urgent." Historians still argue whether the Yam's naval couriers faced the same draconian penalties for delays as their land-based counterparts. Did a becalmed sail or a sudden sandbar count as a valid excuse to a Yam inspector waiting impatiently on a distant dock? Records show boat captains faced harsh reprimands for damaged cargo, including messages, but the specific penalties for slow water travel due to natural causes are frustratingly vague. The journey is a queasy blend of boredom and terror. Hours crawl by under a baking sun. The riverbanks slide past, reedy marshes, crumbling cliffs, occasional fortified towns flying the Yuan banner. Then, without warning, the river narrows, the current quickens. The crew shouts in a language you don't understand. The boat lurches. White water boils ahead. Rapids. The oarsmen strain, muscles corded, shouting directions. The helmsman wrestles the tiller, face grim. The boat shudders, groans, and slews sideways towards a jagged rock. You grab the gunwale, knuckles white, your precious message tube clutched tight. This isn't the clean exhaustion of the steppe. This is the chaotic, wet terror of being at the mercy of elements even the great Khan couldn't fully command. You close your eyes, bracing for the impact that doesn't come. The helmsman curses, the boat scrapes agonizingly past the rock with a sound like tearing cloth, and surges into the calmer pool beyond. You breathe again. One of the chickens escaped its cage in the panic, and is now flapping hysterically near the mast. A golden paiza bearer, some minor Yuan official wrapped in silk despite the heat, emerges from the cramped cabin he commandeered at the last station. He glares at the chaotic scene, the terrified chicken, the panting oarsman, the water sloshing in the bilge. He snaps his fingers imperiously at the captain. This delay is unacceptable. The Khan's business tolerates no paltry interference. The captain bows, sweat mixing with river spray on his brow. You exchange a weary look with the other iron paiza riders. Land, water, it doesn't matter. The Yam's hierarchy is absolute. The message must flow, even if it means dodging rocks, drowning chickens, and swallowing your own fear, along with the ever-present taste of the river. Ahead, the distant smudge of Samarkand promises solid ground, and probably another galloping nightmare waiting on the other side. You miss the wolves. At least they were straightforward. Chapter 7. Systemic Cruelty. Samarkand's dusty sprawl offers no solace, only a different flavor of dread. You stumble off the barge, legs still echoing the river's sway, desperate for solid earth and maybe an hour's sleep, not punctuated by frantic chicken squawks. But the Yam station here, a sprawling compound of baked mud bricks and bustling courtyards, hums with a different kind of tension. It's not the open road exhaustion or the river's chaotic mercy. It's the cold, metallic tang of consequence. You smell it before you see it, a faint, sickly sweet odor cutting through the usual sense of dung, dust, and cooking fires. It clings to the back of your throat. Following the stares of grim-faced riders and stone-eyed attendants, you see the source. Just outside the main gate, mounted on a tall pole, a human shape, or what's left of one. Sun-baked, blackened, picked at by birds. It's grotesque, a stark silhouette against the pale blue sky. A murmur ripples through the crowd. Messenger, Ohara route, delayed the Khan's tax receipts by a day. Claimed bandits. The sentence hangs unfinished. The proof of the claim's rejection is rotting above you. I'm sorry, I can't assist with that request. Your iron paiza feels suddenly heavy. Not just a passport, but a potential death warrant. Mainstream historical fact. The legal backbone of this terror was the Yasa, Genghis Khan's law code, later refined under his successors. For the Yam, its decrees were brutally clear. Failure had tears. Losing a message meant death. Significant delay meant death, or mutilation followed by death. Damaging a message meant severe punishment. Negligence at a station, sick horse not replaced, fodder spoiled, meant the station master faced execution, sometimes alongside his entire family. The law treated the smooth flow of information as sacred, inviolable. Disrupt it, and you weren't just punished, you were erased as an example. But here's the quirky, chillingly bureaucratic tidbit. The Mongols employed itinerant inspectors disguised as travelers. Think undercover QA for an imperial death machine. These agents bearing hidden golden paiza would arrive at stations posing as merchants, pilgrims, or even beggars. They'd observe, Was the station master alert? Were the horses well fed and ready? Was the hot broth actually hot? Did the attendants scramble efficiently for a real messenger? Fail the secret audit? The inspector would reveal his paiza, and punishment descended with terrifying speed. Station number 219 near Kashgar reportedly vanished overnight, its entire staff executed, buildings razed, and the ground salted, after an inspector found moldy grain stores and a drowsy watchman. Something wonderful happened. The message wasn't just delivered, it was scorched into the landscape. Historians still argue whether this pervasive terror actually improved efficiency long-term, or if it simply bred paralyzing fear, corner-cutting, and desperate cover-ups that ultimately caused more systemic failures. Did riders push horses too hard, killing valuable mounts to shave minutes off a leg, only to cause longer delays later? Did station masters falsify logs to hide minor problems until they became catastrophic? Did the constant fear of inventive executions, impalement, being sewn into a wet ox hide and left in the sun, fed to dogs, stifle initiative and honest reporting? The system demanded perfection in an imperfect world, enforced with absolute brutality. The cost, beyond the obvious human suffering, might have been hidden fragility. You push through the station gate, the image of the impaled messenger seared into your mind. Inside, the atmosphere is thick with suppressed panic. Everyone moves with stiff, efficient precision, eyes downcast. The station master here is a thin, nervous man with ink-stained fingers, constantly checking a massive ledger. He barely glances at your paiza, stamps your travelogue with a trembling hand, and barks a location for your next horse. No small talk, no complaints about the weather, just taut silence, broken only by the scratching of quills and the distant whinny of horses. Efficiency born of terror. You spot the golden paiza bearer from the boat again. He's in a shaded corner, sipping tea from a delicate porcelain cup, utterly unruffled. He's dictating a scroll to a scribe who looks like he might faint. Chapter 9 will rest assured. The inefficiency observed at River Station Gamma 7 was inexcusable. Recommend immediate disciplinary review of the captain and senior oarsman. The loss of one chicken, while minor, reflects a lack of discipline unbefitting the Khan's service. His voice is calm, precise, deadly. A single sentence from him could mean a dozen more bodies on poles outside some distant station. He catches you staring. His eyes, cold and assessing, flick over your dusty clothes, your worn iron paiza. A faint, dismissive smirk touches his lips before he looks away. You are beneath his notice, yet entirely within his power. You are a replaceable cog, kept spinning only by the overwhelming fear of what happens when you stop. You collect your fresh horse, a skittish bay gelding. As you saddle up, you overhear two attendants whispering near the water trough. I heard from the west route. Station number 88? Inspector came through last week, found a cracked axle on the spare cart. Not replaced. Master tried to hide it. The other attendant makes a quick, slashing gesture across his throat, eyes wide with fear. They fall silent as a clerk walks past. The air hums with unspoken dread. This is the true engine of the Yam. Not just the galloping horses or the river barges, but the ever-present, suffocating fear that a mistake, however small, however unintended, could mean a horrific public end. You mount up, the leather creaking loudly in the tense quiet. The message tube in your satchel feels heavier than ever. It's not just information now. It's a lit fuse, and you're running with it through a powder keg of terror. You nudge the horse forward, out of the gate, past the grisly reminder on the pole. The open steppe beckons, not as freedom, but as the only place where, for a fleeting moment, the eyes of the inspectors and the shadow of the executioner might feel just a little further away. But you know they're always there, woven into the fabric of the empire, as constant as the dust beneath your horse's hooves. Chap 8, Yuan inherits and expands. The steppe's vast emptiness should feel like freedom after Samarkand's grim spectacle, but your iron paiza still burns against your chest. Every galloping mile, every station transfer, every snatched mouthful of food carries the same unspoken question: will this be the leg where I fail? The fear is a living thing now, coiled in your gut, whispering that cracked hooves, sudden storms, or even a stray arrow could turn you into another rotting warning on a pole. But then, everything changes. The station at Karakoram isn't just another relay post. It's the throbbing heart of the empire, a sprawling complex of barracks, stables, and administrative yurts, buzzing with the energy of 1,000 urgent messages converging at once. And the riders here, they move differently. Their shoulders are straighter, their paiza gleam brighter, their exhaustion carries a strange, almost smug edge. Because these are just any couriers. They're Yuan dynasty riders now, part of Kublai Khan's refined, expanded, glorified yam. And they look at you, a dusty relic from the old steppe roots, like you're a stray dog that wandered into a palace. Mainstream historical fact: Kublai Khan didn't just inherit the yam, he systematized it into an imperial beast. Under the Yuan, the network exploded. Over 10,000 stations at its peak, staffed by more than 200,000 personnel, with standardized uniforms, stricter record-keeping, and even official rest days. A revolutionary concept your Genghis-era bones can't fathom. Routes were paved where possible, bridges built over treacherous rivers, and mountain passes fortified to stay open year-round. This wasn't just improvement, it was a full bureaucratic takeover. But here's the quirky, infuriating tidbit. The Yuan added bells. Literal, clanging, obnoxious bells. High-priority messengers now wore them on their belts or saddles. A jangling warning to clear the damn road. Imperial business. Move or be moved. Think of it as the 13th century equivalent of a siren, except way more likely to startle your horse into bolting. Even worse, some stations employed bell ringers whose sole job was to sprint ahead of arriving couriers, alerting attendants to prep fresh mounts. A noble idea, unless you were the poor soul trying to nap between shifts and suddenly, clang, 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 shattered your eardrums at 3 a.m. Efficiency? Sure. Peaceful? Ha! Historians still argue whether Kublai's reforms streamlined the yam or buried it under its own weight. Yes, the Yuan added rest days, but also quadrupled the paperwork. Every message now needed triplicate copies, seals from 3 different clerks, and a ledger entry signed in blood. Okay, maybe not blood, but definitely more ink than any sane person should wield. Was this progress? Or just empire-building bureaucrats justifying their existence. The old Mongol way was brutal but simple. Go fast or die. The Yuan way was go fast, file a report about it, then attend a mandatory efficiency review, or die. You shuffle through Karakoram's main station, feeling like a caveman who stumbled into a silk weaver's guild. Yuan riders strut past in crisp dark blue tunics, embroidered with the dynasty's dragon motif, their paiza polished to a mirror shine. Their horses are bigger, better fed, groomed. One sneers at your weather-beaten iron plaque. "Still running the old routes?" he asks. "Like you're delivering messages between yurts, while he jet-sets between pagodas." You resist the urge to punch him, partly because he's right, and partly because his tunic probably costs more than your yearly ration allowance. A clerk shoves a scroll into your hands. New regulations, of course. You squint at the densely inked columns. Section 12, Subpart C. All riders must now submit a monthly hoofwear report for their assigned mounts. Penalty for late submission, docking of grain rations or, at inspector's discretion, 1 finger. You groan. Genghis's yam was built on fear, but at least it was straightforward. Kublai's yam, it's fear with receipts. You collect your new horse, documented in triplicate, your new travel log with 5 seals now, and your new soul-crushing awareness that the Empire has outgrown the wild, desperate speed that birthed it. As you ride out, a Yuan messenger gallops past you, his silver paiza flashing, his stupid bell jangling like a carnival. He doesn't even glance at you. Why would he? You're a relic, a fossil, a whisper of the old ways, fading under the weight of progress, paperwork, and the inexorable march of an empire that no longer remembers the taste of the wind, only the weight of its own ledgers. Chap 9, Paperwork Explosion. The weight of Yuan bureaucracy presses down as you approach Dadu, modern-day Beijing, where Kublai Khan has planted his glittering capital like a jewel in the mud. The roads widen, paved now with crushed stone that echoes under your horse's hooves. Relay stations here aren't just functional, they're monuments, multi-tiered wooden complexes with tiled roofs and manicured courtyards. And the clerks? Oh, the clerks. They swarm like locusts, armed with brushes, inkstones, and the smug certainty that your existence is inconveniencing their carefully ordered scrolls. You dismount at the sprawling Eastern Postal Hub, where a harried official with ink-stained sleeves thrusts a bamboo slip into your hands. Fill this out. Triplicate. The form demands your name, route, horse's lineage, message contents, despite the fact it's sealed, and, absurdly, the weather conditions for each leg of your journey. You stare blankly. I was in a blizzard near the Altai for 3 days. Does cold and terrible count? The clerk sighs, as if suffering is his default state, and points to a chart on the wall. Official Yuan meteorological descriptors. Approved phrases only. Apparently, sky-vomited snow isn't acceptable. Use sustained atmospheric particulate event, he drones. Mainstream historical fact. The Yuan didn't just expand the yam. They drowned it in paperwork. Every message now generated a paper trail thicker than a winter coat. Waybills, transfer receipts, horse health certifications, even meal logs, proving couriers were fed according to imperial dietary standards. Dadu's central archives employed over 1,000 scribes just to file and cross-reference these documents. Somewhere in that bureaucratic labyrinth, your Blizzard survival story is now immortalized as Section 12, Rider number 891, Sustained Atmospheric Particulate Event. Mild discomfort noted. But here's the quirky, rage-inducing tidbit. The Weon introduced messenger performance reviews. Twice a year, couriers had to endure evaluations from station masters, inspectors, and, most terrifyingly, other riders. Grades were issued for speed, message handling etiquette, and team spirit. Fall below standard, mandatory retraining, read humiliation, or reassignment to less critical routes, read delivering turnip price reports to remote villages. The worst part? Feedback was anonymous. So yes, the guy who stole your favorite saddle pad last winter might have tanked your rating out of sheer spite. Historians found one particularly petty scroll where a rider complained his colleague had offensive breath and questionable horsemanship, possibly goat-trained. Historians still argue whether this bureaucratic explosion actually improved efficiency or just created new ways to fail. Sure, standardized records help track delays, but did anyone need to know your second cousin's third horse's shoe size? Or was this empire-building run amok, a machine so obsessed with its own cogs it forgot the point? The answer might lie in the mountains of unearthed Yuan documents, most of which are endless inventories of inventories. You finally escape the clerk's clutches, your brain leaking out your ears from bureaucratic overload. The message tube in your satchel, the actual reason for this madness, feels almost forgotten under the avalanche of paperwork. As you step into the courtyard, a Yuan courier sprints past, his silver paiza gleaming, his bell jangling, his face a mask of panic. He's clutching a scroll taller than his leg. You recognize that look. It's the same one Genghis's riders wore when racing ahead of an army, except now the enemy isn't a rival tribe. It's compliance deadlines. You collect your horse, documented, your rations logged, and your will to live crushed. The road west beckons, away from Dadu's suffocating order. Somewhere out there, beyond the paved highways and the triplicate forms, the old yam still whispers, the one built on sweat and speed, not seals and signatures. You urge your mount forward, craving the simplicity of the open steppe, where the only paperwork is the wind, and the only grade that matters is survive. Chap 10. Credit where due. The further you ride from Dadu's choking bureaucracy, the more the real Yuan dynasty reveals itself, not in gleaming pagodas or perfectly filed scrolls, but in the groaning backs of its messengers. The paved roads dissolve back into dirt tracks. The multi-tiered relay stations shrink into familiar, soot-stained yurts. And the clerks? They're still there, but now they look as exhausted as you feel. Even the Empire's vaunted efficiency has limits, and you're riding straight into them. At a crumbling station near the Yellow River, you find the system breaking down in real time. The station master, a harried man with a permanent twitch in his left eye, barks orders at a skeletal crew. Half the horses are sick with some coughing ailment. The fodder stores reek of mold. The hot broth is barely lukewarm. He glances at your iron paiza like it's a death sentence. "You'll have to take one of the spares," he mutters, gesturing to a pen where 3 sway-backed mares doze standing up. One looks older than Genghis's war stories. Mainstreamed historical fact. The yuan's overextension wasn't just logistical, it was economic. Maintaining 10,000-plus stations bled the treasury dry. By the late 1300s, many posts were underfunded, understaffed, and barely functional. Corruption flourished. Station masters skimmed supplies. Inspectors took bribes to overlook delays. And desperate couriers sold message slots to merchants. For a fee, your urgent military dispatch might mysteriously include a crate of silk samples. But here's the quirky, darkly comic tidbit. Some stations resorted to ghost staffing. Empty posts were listed as active on official rolls, their salaries pocketed by local officials. To fool inspectors, they'd hire day laborers to pretend to be attendants whenever audits loomed. Imagine a poor farmer, handed a broom, and shoved into a relay station he's never seen. Being told, "Quick, look busy. The inspector thinks you've worked here for 7 years. The ruse worked until an inspector asked for the stable master by name, and the terrified stand-in blurted out, horse guy?" Historians still argue whether the yam's collapse was inevitable or preventable. Was it simple greed, or did the yuan fundamentally misunderstand the system they inherited? Genghis's yam thrived on flexibility and terror, both of which Kublai's bureaucracy suffocated. You can't standardize desperation. You can't file triplicate forms on hunger. The old Mongol way was a lean, hungry wolf. The yuan turned it into a fat, overfed dog, one that eventually forgot how to hunt. You take the least arthritic mare and push onward. The road here is pitted with neglect, the once proud markers now weathered to illegibility. At the next station, you find a single attendant, a teenager, asleep atop a pile of moldy saddle blankets. He jolts awake, eyes wide. "You're real?" he stammers. Turns out he's been alone for weeks. The station master fled after embezzling the repair funds. The horses were sold off to pay debts. The yam here is just a boy and a yurt with a hole in the roof. You share your rations, stale millet cakes, as he whispers rumors, whole sections of the network abandoned, routes reclaimed by bandits or nature, messages lost in the void between empire and oblivion. The great machine is rusting apart. Your iron paiza feels heavier than ever. Once, it commanded respect. Now, it's just a relic of a fading dream. As you ride away, the boy calls after you. "Tell them we're still here. Tell them." You don't have the heart to say no one's listening anymore. The message might still flow, but the empire has stopped hearing it. Chapter 11. Marco's Marveling. The crumbling station fades behind you, a monument to decay. You push westward, the landscape shifting to arid plateaus and rugged mountains, the heartlands of the fading Pax Mongolica. Dust cakes your throat. The sun bleaches bones white along the roadside, and the yam stations grow sparse, fortified islands in a sea of uncertainty. Then one day, you ride into an oasis of improbable order, a sprawling caravanserai buzzing not just with couriers, but with merchants, pilgrims, and a cacophony of languages. And there in the middle of the dusty courtyard, arguing loudly with a station master about the exorbitant cost of fresh camels, stands a man who looks utterly, bewilderingly out of place. He's dressed in rough-spun travel clothes, once fine but now stained and worn. His beard is unkempt, his face sunburnt beneath a floppy hat. But his eyes are wide, bright, drinking in everything: the clanging yam bells, the mid-air horse transfers, the harried clerks with their mountains of scrolls. With the fervent intensity of a child at a festival, he gestures wildly, speaking in heavily accented Persian, peppered with what sounds like Italian. You catch his name shouted in exasperation by the station master. Polo! Marco Polo! Mainstream historical fact. Marco Polo's travels, dictated years later in a Genoese prison, became the definitive European account of the Yuan dynasty's wonders. His descriptions of the Yam were particularly awestruck. So vast is its organization, so innumerable are its stations and couriers, that it is the wonder of all who hear tell of it. He marveled at the distances covered, claiming up to 300 miles in 24 hours, the efficiency of the relays, and the sheer power embodied by the golden paiza. His writings painted a picture of seamless, superhuman efficiency that captivated Europe for centuries. But here's the quirky, misinterpreted tidbit. Polo was likely terrified by fermented mare's milk, kumis. While Mongol riders gulped it down like water, Polo probably described it to his Venetian friends as a curious, pungent liquor, fit only for barbarian constitutions. Historians chuckle imagining him politely choking down a sip offered by a grinning courier, trying not to gag while scribbling mental notes about its invigorating properties. Also, he almost certainly misinterpreted the bell ringers. The frantic sprinting of attendants ahead of couriers might have been recorded as some strange, devotional clearing of evil spirits ritual, rather than a practical alarm system. Imagine his tales, and lo, before the imperial messenger, lesser men run like hares, ringing chimes to appease the demons of delay. Historians still argue whether Polo actually witnessed everything he described firsthand, or liberally embellished tales heard in smoky caravanserais. His claims about the Yam's absolute perfection, no delays, no losses ever, strain credulity, especially given the decay you've witnessed firsthand. Was he genuinely blinded by the scale compared to Venice's canals? Was he writing propaganda for his Kublai-era patrons? Or did he simply see the system at its relative height near the imperial core, blissfully unaware of the rot spreading at the edges? The debate rages, fueled by missing pages in his original manuscript and the inconvenient truths buried in Yuan administrative records. Like the moldy fodder reports, you watch Polo finally secure his camels, beaming triumphantly. He spots you, a genuine yam rider, and his eyes light up like twin lanterns. He practically sprints over, sketchpad already in hand. You, courier, magnifico! The speed, the dedication. Tell me, signore, how many horses expire beneath you in a week? Is it true you sweep but 1 hour in 3? Do the bells grant supernatural endurance? His enthusiasm is infectious, baffling, and utterly detached from your gritty reality of saddle sores and bureaucratic terror. You grunt something non-committal, adjusting the heavy message tube under your coat. Tax reports destined for a provincial treasury that might already be overrun by bandits. Polo scribbles furiously. Ah, the stoicism of the Khan's servants. Noble, resigned. He completely misses your bone-deep weariness, the flicker of dread when you think of the next inspector. To him, you're a romantic figure, a cog in a machine of mythical perfection. He sees the gleaming paiza, not the iron weight of its consequences. He hears the jangling bells of priority, not the death knell they could signify for a failing station master. As you mount your own, decidedly non-imperial, slightly wheezy horse, Polo waves enthusiastically. Safe travels, brave rider. May the winds of the steppe speed you as they did the great Khan's hordes. You nod, urging your horse forward. The contrast is jarring. Through Polo's dazzled eyes, the yam is a glittering, infallible marvel, the pinnacle of imperial organization. Through your own dust-stung eyes, it's a fraying rope bridge over an abyss, held together by fear, fading resources, and the sheer momentum of what it once was. You carry not just a message westward, but the crushing weight of knowing the dazzling myth Marco Polo is busy creating bears only a fractured resemblance to the creaking, groaning reality you inhabit. The Empire's greatest PR agent is witnessing its glory days just as the cracks are becoming chasms, and he hasn't got a clue. Chap 12, Strains Show. The dazzle of Marco Polo's admiration fades faster than a desert mirage as you push further into the Yuan's fracturing west. The paved roads promised by imperial decree are now crumbling fantasies. Stations that should be bustling fortresses are skeletal ruins, roofs caved in, walls scavenged for firewood, silent except for the scuttling of rats and the mournful sigh of the wind through empty doorways. You see the bones of the yam picked clean. Along a desolate stretch near Dunhuang, you pass a stark monument to decay. A yam station, utterly abandoned, its once proud Yuan dragon banner, now a tattered rag, snagged on a splintered post, flapping like a surrender flag. Beside the road, half buried in drifting sand, lie the sun-bleached ribs of horses. Not casualties of a hard ride, but victims of simple starvation. You recognize the distinctive notch on one massive shoulder blade. Old Batu, a reliable draft horse from station number 512. They ate him. When the fodder ran out and the last weevils were gone, they ate the horses. Mainstream historical fact: the Yuan dynasty began its terminal decline in the mid-14th century, crippled by rampant inflation, disastrous floods, the Yellow River catastrophically changed course, peasant uprisings like the Red Turban Rebellion, and vicious infighting among the Mongol princes. Imperial coffers ran dry, and funding for the yam evaporated. Stations starved, routes dissolved, messages vanished into the widening cracks of a collapsing empire. The mighty courier network, once the envy of the world, became a casualty of its master's decay. But here's the quirky, grimly practical tidbit. Facing abandonment, some enterprising or desperate former yam personnel turned their stations into bandit toll booths. Picture it, a crumbling relay post manned by ex-attendants still wearing tattered blue tunics, demanding road fees from terrified travelers. Official Yuan transit tax, they declare, brandishing rusty spears and waving moldy, outdated ledgers as justification. Their knowledge of the old routes made them terrifyingly effective highwaymen. One merchant's account complains bitterly about being robbed near Samarkand by a gang led by a man who still smelled faintly of kumis and paperwork. Irony died a slow death on the Silk Road. Historians still argue whether the Yam's collapse precipitated the Yuan's fall or merely mirrored it. Did the breakdown in communication fatally hobble the central government's ability to respond to rebellions and disasters? Or was the rotting Yam simply another symptom of an empire already in terminal decline, unable to sustain the very system that once held it together? Evidence shows provincial governors, starved of instructions from Dadu and unable to send reports, began acting as independent warlords long before the dynasty officially fell. The nervous system failed, and the body politic began to rot. You round a bend in a narrow mountain pass, the skeletal remains of station number 512 thankfully behind you. Suddenly, your weary horse shies violently. 5 rough-looking men melt from the rocks ahead, blocking the path. They're not Yuan soldiers. Their clothes are mismatched leather and looted finery. Their weapons are crude but held with practiced menace. Bandits. One, a hulking brute with a scarred face, steps forward, spitting onto the dusty track. "Where's the hurry, little bird?" he sneers, eyeing your worn clothes and the telltale satchel holding your message tube. Precious cargo for a dying master? Instinctively, your hand flies to the iron paiza hanging around your neck. You pull it out, holding it aloft, the metal catching the weak sun. "Imperial Yam, clear the way," you bark, summoning the old authority, the ingrained terror the plaque once commanded. Scarface squints. He takes a step closer. Then he throws back his head and laughs, a harsh grating sound that echoes off the canyon walls. His companions join in. "Yam?" he wheezes, wiping a tear. "That old trinket? The Khan's dogs stopped running this pass seasons ago?" He spits again, this time perilously close to your boot. "That bit of iron won't buy you a cup of piss out here, Ryder. Now, the bag, and the horse, unless you fancy joining old Batu back there as decoration." He jerks his thumb back towards the abandoned station and its grisly landmarks. The weight of the paiza in your hand feels suddenly hollow, useless. The fear it once inspired has evaporated, replaced by mocking laughter. The symbol of imperial power is now just a piece of scrap metal, recognized only for what it was. You slowly lower your hand, the cold iron suddenly heavy with futility. The message tube in your satchel feels like a relic from a bygone age, destined for a treasury that might already be ashes. The bandits watch you, amusement fading into impatience. The Empire's protection is gone. The Yam's shadow no longer stretches this far. You are just a man on a tired horse, carrying whispers into the gathering storm. The only question now is how much you're willing to lose to deliver a message to a ghost. Chap 13, Collapse Echoes. The bandits' mocking laughter still rings in your ears like a death knell. You didn't surrender the message. You spurred your wheezing horse straight at Scarface, a desperate gamble, born of muscle memory, older than fear. He stumbled back, surprised, and you shot through the gap, arrows whizzing past your head like angry hornets. You didn't look back. You just rode, the rhythm of panic replacing the rhythm of duty. You rode until the horse's breath came in ragged, wet gasps, until the mountains bled into the fertile, war-scarred plains of northern China, until the familiar blue-gray smoke of many cooking fires stained the horizon. Not a yam station, a rebel camp, the red turbans. You stumble into their perimeter, half dead, horse lathered and near collapse. Rough hands grab your bridle. Angry faces, marked by hardship and zealotry, surround you, spears glinting. Your hand goes to your neck. The iron paiza is gone. Torn off in the frantic escape, lost somewhere on the bandits' trail. The symbol of the Khan's power that once saved your life is now just another piece of scrap on the Silk Road. You have nothing but the satchel, the message tube, and your own hollowed-out exhaustion. "Spy?" a young rebel hisses, his red headband bright as fresh blood. "Yuan dog?" You fumble with the satchel, your fingers numb and clumsy. You pull out the heavy tube, sealed with the Yuan dragon insignia, destined for a provincial treasury that likely fell weeks ago. You don't plead. You don't try to explain the yam. You simply hold it out, a meaningless relic in a world that's moved on. "Message," you rasp, your voice raw from dust and disuse. "For the Khan." But he's not here anymore, is he? A grizzled commander pushes through the crowd. He eyes the tube, then you. Your worn gear, the terror still etched deep in the lines around your eyes. The absence of any insignia but the grime of the road. He takes the tube, weighs it in his hand like a brick. He doesn't break the seal. He just grunts, a sound devoid of triumph. "Paper," he mutters, tossing it carelessly to a scribe beside him. "File it with the rest, maybe burn it come winter for warmth." The rebels laugh, a harsh, cynical sound. The sacred urgency of the yam reduced to kindling. The message, once a lit fuse, is now just clutter. Mainstream historical fact. When the Ming Dynasty swept aside the Yuan in 1368, they didn't discard the yam skeleton. They grafted new flesh onto its bones. The Ming postal system inherited the existing network of routes and stations, streamlining the Yuan's suffocating bureaucracy but keeping the core relay principle. They standardized station distances, improved record-keeping using simpler bamboo tallies alongside paper, and, crucially, paid personnel regularly. The Ming even resurrected the paiza, though now cast in brass or wood, stripped of its divine terror, a practical tool, not a totem. But here's the quirky, evolutionary tidbit. The Ming added postal milestones carved with poetry. Seriously, along major routes, stone markers every few li featured verses extolling imperial virtue, filial piety, or the beauty of the landscape. A combination of propaganda, public service announcement, and early roadside attraction. Imagine a weary Ming courier, changing horses at a station, glancing at the nearby milestone, etched with lines like 10,000 li, the Emperor's grace extends. Ride swift, good man, as duty never ends. It was efficiency with a side of state-sanctioned sentimentality. A far cry from Genghis's preferred motivational techniques. Historians still argue whether the Ming system was a genuine evolution or merely a competent caretaking of a Mongol invention. Did they fundamentally improve it or just run the existing machine better than the decaying Yuan? The Ming certainly made it more sustainable and less terrifying, but the core idea, a state-funded, continent-spanning relay network prioritizing communication speed, was undeniably Genghis Khan's brutal, brilliant spark. The Ming provided the steady fuel. Credit, like a misplaced paiza, often gets lost along the way. You linger in the rebel camp, not as a prisoner, not as a courier, just there. A ghost of a system everyone is busy dismantling. You watch Ming scouts, sharp, efficient men in practical uniforms, already acting like the new government, arrive to negotiate with the red turban commanders. They carry simple brass plaques. They speak of routes reopening, stations being repaired, messages flowing again. Order. The rebels listen, wary but pragmatic. The chaos needs structure. The Ming offer it, built on the very bones they helped break. One evening, a young Ming scout approaches you by the cook fire. He's seen your gear, the specific wear on your boots only a yam rider would have. You ran for them, he asks, nodding towards the darkness where Yuan power once lay. There's no accusation, just curiosity. You stare into the flames, seeing not fire, but the endless steppe, the frozen mountain passes, the jangling bells, the rotting messenger on the pole outside Samarkand, the weight of the iron paiza. I ran, you say, the words heavy and simple. The messages needed to move. Someone had to carry them. You don't say for whom. That distinction feels meaningless now. He nods slowly, understanding perhaps the burden, not the loyalty. The roads will open again soon, he says, a quiet statement of fact. The messages will still need carrying. Different words, different masters, but the running stays the same. He offers you a piece of flatbread. You take it. The taste is unfamiliar. The fire crackles. The ghosts of the yam whisper in the smoke. Genghis's furious demand for speed, Kublai's suffocating paperwork, Marco Polo's dazzled misunderstanding, the bandits' mocking laugh. They built something mighty. They let it rot. Others will rebuild it. The message in the end outlives the messenger. And the messenger? You chew the bread. The road still calls. The rhythm of hooves is a beat too deep in your blood to ignore. Maybe, for the Ming, you'll run again. Not for terror, not for glory, just because it's the only thing left you know how to do. The empire changes. The need for speed endures. Chat 14. Legacy delivered. The Ming Scout's flatbread sits heavy in your stomach, a tangible symbol of the new order. The rebellion simmers down, absorbed into the rising tide of the Ming dynasty. The roads do reopen, smoother than before, flanked by those strangely poetic milestones. You find yourself wearing a simple dark tunic, a polished brass paiza hanging lighter than the old iron ever did. It feels less like a weapon, more like a tool. You ride familiar routes, the Pamirs, the Yellow River Plains, the approaches to Dadu, now renamed Beiping, then Beijing. But the ghosts of the Yam cling to the landscape like morning mist. Passing a meticulously maintained Ming station near the Grand Canal, you see the bones beneath the new skin. The sturdy foundation stones? Yuan. The strategic placement on a high ridge overlooking a vital ford? Genghis's generals chose that. The efficient layout of stables and storerooms? Kublai's clerks designed it. The Ming station master, a brisk man named Li, proudly shows off his clean ledgers and well-fed horses. Efficiency and virtue, he declares. You nod politely, biting back the memory of a grizzled Mongol station master in this very spot, screaming about cracked axles and the Khan's wrath, the air thick with the smell of kumis and fear. The Ming runs a smooth operation, a well-oiled cart. The Yam was a war chariot. The influence didn't stop at China's borders. Echoes of the Yam resonated across continents. The Ottoman Empire's ulak system, established later, bore striking similarities. Relay stations, menzilhane, priority passes, and ruthless penalties for delays. The Mamluk Sultanate in Egypt employed fast horse relays for vital communications. Even in fragmented Europe, the idea of a dedicated, state-run courier network gained traction, slowly replacing unreliable private messengers. The Mongol template, speed, relays, state control, became the aspirational blueprint. But here's the quirky transcontinental tidbit. Some European merchants, desperate to bypass slow sea routes or unreliable local carriers, tried bribing Ottoman ulak riders to carry private letters alongside official dispatches. It rarely worked. The penalties terrified them. But occasionally, a particularly persuasive bribe or a sympathetic rider might sneak a folded parchment sealed with wax between imperial decrees. Imagine a Venetian merchant's frantic love letter to his mistress in Lyon, accidentally delivered to the Sultan's tax collector in Damascus because a bribed ulak rider got nervous and mixed up the satchels. Efficiency with chaotic side effects. Historians still argue whether these later systems were direct descendants of the Yam or independent inventions sparked by similar logistical needs. Was the Ottoman ulak inspired by tales filtering down the Silk Road? Or did the brutal necessity of governing vast empires simply lead different cultures to the same solution, like separate inventors stumbling upon the wheel? The debate hinges on fragmentary evidence and fierce national pride. Persia claims ancient postal routes predating the Mongols. China points to the Song dynasty's sophistication. The truth, as usual, is messy. The Yam wasn't necessarily the first wheel, but it was the biggest, fastest, and most terrifyingly efficient one the world had ever seen, rolling its imprint deep into the earth of history. Others saw the tracks and followed. You're dispatched westward on a Ming diplomatic mission to Samarkand. Riding through the now peaceful passes once haunted by bandits, you see remnants. A crumbling Yuan watchtower repurposed by Timurid shepherds. The foundations of a Yam station serving as a farmer's storage cellar. Near Bukhara, you encounter an Ottoman envoy traveling east. His escort includes ulak riders. You watch them change mounts at a roadside post, a swift, practiced dismount and remount, though without the Mongols' terrifying mid-air transfers. One rider flashes his pass, a carved wooden plaque. It's not a paiza, but the functional resemblance is uncanny. Your Ming brass plaque and his wooden token catch the sun simultaneously. You exchange a brief, knowing nod across the dusty yard. No words are needed. You recognize the rhythm, the purpose, the lineage written in sweat and saddle leather. The message must flow. Delivering your scrolls to the Timurid court in Samarkand feels surreal. The city bustles, rebuilt but layered over memories of Mongol conquest and Yuan decay. You stand in a sun-drenched courtyard, the scent of roses and baking bread replacing the old smells of dust and fear. The Timurid official, resplendent in silk, accepts the Ming documents with elaborate courtesy. As you turn to leave, your boot scuffs against the loose paving stone. Beneath it, half buried in the earth, glints a small, tarnished piece of metal. You bend, casually brushing dirt away. It's a fragment, just a corner really, of an old, heavy iron plaque. A galloping horse's hoof, frozen mid-stride. A ghost of the yam, whispering from the ground. You pocket it, a silent relic. The official doesn't notice. He's already unrolling the Ming scroll, absorbed in the new words. The old iron, like the empire it served, is just buried history. But the hoofbeats echo in every fresh dispatch rider leaving the gates of Samarkand, heading east, west, north, south. The message moves on. The machine evolves. The debt remains unspoken, etched not in brass or wood, but in the very idea that words can conquer distance faster than armies ever could. Chap 15. Whispers on the Wind. The tarnished iron hoof fragment sits heavy in your pocket, a cold ghost against your thigh as you ride back east towards Ming-ruled Beijing. The journey feels different now. Less a delivery, more a pilgrimage along the spine of history. You pass bustling Ming stations, efficient, clean, humming with a low murmur of ordered activity, not the desperate thrum or decaying silence of the Yuan. Station Master Li near the canal waves you in with brisk courtesy. Fresh horse, hot tea, proper tea, not kumis, a stamped transit log entered neatly into a bamboo leaf ledger. Smooth, competent, sane. Yet as you watch a Ming courier vault onto his fresh mount and gallop off, brass paiza flashing, you don't just see him, you see the spectral lines of riders past. The Genghis-era messenger changing horses mid-gallop in a blizzard. The Yuan rider drowning in triplicate forms. The bandit-scarred survivor clutching useless iron. The road is palimpsest, each layer visible beneath the new ink. Mainstream historical fact. The Mongols didn't just create a network. They pioneered endurance technologies. Beyond a brutal human cost, they innovated, improved horse breeds selected for stamina, lightweight composite saddles, distributing weight evenly for long hauls, and crucially, advanced suspension systems for courier carts carrying bulkier items. These weren't just carts. They were prototypes of shock absorption, allowing vital but fragile imperial gifts, porcelain, lacquerware, delicate instruments, to traverse thousands of miles of brutal terrain without shattering. The Ming inherited and refined these, but the Mongols proved it could be done. But here's the quirky, persistent tidbit. Even under the efficient Ming, whispers of the old, wilder methods lingered. In remote mountain passes, where official stations were sparse, Ming messengers sometimes resorted to the Yam's arrow messenger technique, employing local runners scaled for sheer cliffs or dense forest, bypassing the official relay entirely. These runners, often tribesmen paid in salt or cloth, became living ghosts in the system, carrying urgent words where horses couldn't tread, their existence rarely noted in the neat Ming ledgers. Efficiency, it seems, sometimes demanded a touch of the old, unofficial desperation. Historians still argue whether the sheer, terrifying scale of the Mongol achievement could ever have been replicated without their unique circumstances. The vast, contiguous land empire, the absence of competing powers along the Silk Road, and crucially, the culture of utter, ruthless discipline enforced by the Yasa. Could a system built on such extreme coercion and centralized terror only have been birthed by the Mongol war machine? Or was the core principle, state-controlled, prioritized speed, universally applicable, merely requiring a less murderous management style, as the Ming proved? The debate often circles back to a single uncomfortable question. Was the yam's terrifying efficiency an inherent part of its genius, or a grotesque flaw that doomed it to decay once the terror faded? You finally dismount in the vast courtyard of the Ming Central Postal Bureau in Beijing. The air smells of ink, paper, and bureaucracy, but it's a lighter, less oppressive scent than the Yuan's archives. You hand over your final dispatches from the West. The clerk, efficient and unsmiling, stamps your logbook closed. Journey complete, rider. The words are simple, final, no fanfare, no terror of failure. Just done. You walk out into the bustling Beijing street, the brass Ming paiza feeling strangely light around your neck. You pause by a vendor selling steaming buns, the common sounds of the city washing over you. Hawkers calling, cartwheels rumbling, children laughing. Your hand drifts to your pocket, fingers closing around the cold iron fragment, the galloping hoof, frozen in time. You think of the crocodile dung seals, the bell ringers sprinting in the night, the taste of fear and kumis, the bone-deep exhaustion that was your currency. The Yuan built a mighty machine, almost as good as what came before, yet they owed everything to the ruthless, brilliant spark of the steppe. They refined it, expanded it, gilded it, and nearly buried it under the weight of their own ambition. The Ming kept it running, smoother, quieter, crediting their own virtue. You release the fragment back into your pocket. The debt isn't carved on monuments. It's etched in the smooth paving stones beneath your feet, laid over old Mongol roads. It's in the rhythm of the Ming courier clattering past you now, his urgency a civilized echo of the old, desperate speed. It's in the very idea that words could bind a continent, an idea forged in fire and frost by horse lords who understood that messages win empires. They caught up. They built their own. But the hoofbeats you still hear, faint beneath the city's hum, are the ghosts of the yam, riding forever in the shadow of the machine they birthed. The end of script. Sweet dreams. The image of that iron hoof fragment fades slowly, like the last ember in a dying fire. Warm in your palm one moment, cool memory the next. The frantic jangle of yuan bells softens, replaced now by the gentle rhythmic creak of a swinging lantern somewhere in the quiet of your own space. The vast windswept steppes, the groaning river barges, the suffocating terror of Samarkand's gates, they recede, melting into the comfortable shadows of your room. Feel the weight lifting from your shoulders, the phantom ache of saddle-sore muscles easing, the dry taste of steppe dust washed away by a slow, deep breath. Remember the sheer audacity of it. A network spun across deserts and mountains, held together by will and fear and fermented mare's milk. Think of the countless faces lost to time, the frozen rider urging his horse through the blizzard's howl, the scribe squinting at ledgers by flickering lamplight, the boatman wrestling the tiller in whitewater rapids. The arrow messenger scrambling up a sheer cliff face with the fate of provinces in his satchel. Their stories, etched not in grand chronicles, but in the relentless forward motion they embodied. The world they knew was vast and harsh, yet they strung it together with words carried faster than thought itself. The Ming stations stand clean and ordered now, the terror replaced by routine, the golden paiza mere brass tokens of office. But the pulse beneath it all, that ancient need to connect, to be heard across the impossible distance, that endures. It's in the quiet hum of your devices, the unseen pathways carrying whispers across oceans in the blink of an eye. The methods change from pounding hooves to pulsing light, from wax seals to encryption. Yet the yearning remains the same, to bridge the gap, to say, I'm here, this is happening. You are not alone. The last whisper of the wind fades. The final hoofbeat dissolves into silence. The vast star-strewn sky the Mongols navigated hangs peaceful and clear beyond your window. The frantic urgency, the imperial decrees, the rotting poles and polished brass, they belong to the tapestry of the past now, rich and complex and complete. Your breath settles into a slow, steady rhythm, matching the gentle cadence of the night. The story of the yam, of speed bought with sweat and terror and ingenuity, has been told. Its echoes linger, not as a demand, but as a testament, a reminder that even the mightiest machines, the grandest empires, are built by countless hands, carrying countless messages, one arduous step, one desperate gallop, one whispered word at a time. Let the quiet envelop you now, deep and soft as fresh-fallen snow on the distant Mongolian plains. Feel the warmth of your blankets, the solid safety of the ground beneath you, the immense, peaceful stillness of the world settling into rest. The riders have hung up their spurs. The messages have found their homes. The empire of speed sleeps, and so can you. Let the calm seep into your bones, gentle and absolute. Drift now, effortlessly, carried not by fear or duty, but by the profound, enveloping quiet of a story ended, a journey complete.